normal candidate. Yet the perception and treatment of this election as a normal contest between competing candidates persists because some people are not treating it with the urgency and the gravity that it deserves. Moments ago, during her remarks at a West Philadelphia church, Kamala Harris spoke bluntly about what's at stake for the country.
While we know there are those who seek to deepen division, to spread hate, to sow fear, and to cause chaos, who suggest that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of what we know the real measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. But I see all this, and it tells me why this moment in our nation has to be about so much more than partisan politics. It must be about the good work we can do together, about our fundamental values, and about who we are as Americans and as people of faith. Here in Pennsylvania right now, each of us has an opportunity to make a difference, because in this moment we do face a real question. What kind of country do we want to live in? That's before us right now. What kind of country do we want for our children and our grandchildren? A country of chaos, fear, and hate, or a country of freedom, justice, and compassion? And the great thing about living in a democracy is we, the people, have the choice to answer that question.
And that's really central to the whole issue. As disheartening as things may seem, we still have that right to make that decision. Some of history's strongmen rose to power because people wrote off their pronouncements as hyperbole and failed to understand them as a symptom of their narcissism. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis were masters of propaganda and stagecraft. So was the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, who posed for pictures like this, staged photographs, sometimes shirtless, to appeal to the common man. We don't need to see Donald Trump shirtless. These days, he's got AI to help him portray the kind of stereotypical masculinity that he doesn't possess in real life. But every now and then, he partakes in stage-managed events, like when he donned an apron over his suit to serve some fries to some of his supporters who were handpicked by his campaign. This was covered by the media as a campaign stop. It was a ridiculous spectacle in every respect. A billionaire businessman who was born rich and has been known to stiff his own workers and contractors, masquerading as everyman, dodging questions about minimum wage from a drive-through window. This is important context to keep in mind as Trump, a native New Yorker, fulfills his dream today of holding a rally at Madison Square Garden. An event he will definitely exploit for propaganda over the coming week. And at this late stage, in this crucial stage of an immensely consequential election, there are troubling signs that the media is already beginning to buckle to Trump's creeping authoritarianism. The fallout continues for the Washington Post and the LA Times after their publishers announced that the papers will not be making a presidential endorsement this year. For the Post, it's a problem that's been exacerbated by the fact that its owner, Jeff Bezos, has billions of dollars worth of contracts with the federal government through his other businesses like Amazon, particularly Amazon Web Services, and the aerospace manufacturing company Blue Origin. In fact, on the same day that the Post's publisher announced that the newspaper will not make an endorsement, the Associated Press photographed two executives from Blue Origin, the CEO on the left, David Limp, and Megan Mitchell, the vice president of government relations on the right, speaking with Donald Trump on the tarmac in Austin. This highlights the complexity of business journalism conflicting with or undermining the actual work of journalism, which can have dire consequences for society as a whole. The legendary newspaper publisher, the former politician Joseph Pulitzer, warned about all of this in 1904. Quote, "Our republic and its press will rise or fall together. An able, disinterested, public-spirited press with trained intelligence to know the right and the courage to do it can preserve that public virtue without which popular government is a sham and a mockery. A cynical, mercenary, demagogic press will produce, in time, a people as base as itself," end quote. And that may be the path we're headed down if other media owners and publishers follow the Washington Post's lead. Moments after news of the Post's non-endorsement broke on Friday, the paper's own reporters reached out for comment from Martin Barron, the retired former executive editor of the Washington Post and a giant of journalism in this country. He said, quote, "This is cowardice. a moment of darkness that will leave democracy as a casualty. Donald Trump will celebrate this as an invitation to further intimidate the Post's owner, Jeff Bezos, and other media owners. History will mark a disturbing chapter of spinelessness at an institution famed for courage, end quote. Joining me now is Marty Baron. Newsrooms under his leadership have won 18 Pulitzer Prizes, including 11 with the Washington Post, for leading the coverage of some of the most important stories of our time, including the January 6th insurrection. His previous work at the Boston Globe covering the sex abuse scandal within the Catholic Church not only won awards, it was made into the Academy Award-winning film called Spotlight. Baron is the author of the book Collision of Power, Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post, a book that is very relevant to what we're talking about today. Marty, good to see you. Thank you for being on the show this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Marty, you don't do a ton of press. You don't comment on everything that goes on out there. So when you speak, journalists pay attention because it means something. There are a good number of people out there who perhaps do not understand the relationship between the owner of a newspaper, the publisher, and the editorial board and the reporter. So give us a little bit of insight into that relationship and what it means for the owner and the publisher of the Post to have blocked an endorsement of Kamala Harris that was basically prepared.
Well, at a place like the Washington Post, there's a division between the opinions department and the news department. I was in charge of the news department. That's a pretty traditional setup at many American newspapers. So I wasn't involved in the opinions. But my concern here is that are the circumstances of this decision to not publish an endorsement. Every newspaper can decide whether it wants to issue political endorsements or not. If this decision had been made 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, fine. They can decide whether they want to issue endorsements for president or any other political office. But this was a decision that was announced 11 days before the election. It was not a decision made in consultation with the editorial board. It was a decision that, according to the Post itself, its own reporting, that was made by Jeff Bezos, and the circumstances are just highly suspect. So that's my concern here, and that's why I'm speaking out. Normally, if I were at the newspaper, I wouldn't be involved in these decisions, of course, but I felt it was important to speak out in this instance.
So I want to try and examine what, without you knowing or me knowing what the reasons are. There are a couple of ideas out there. Timothy Snyder talks about this concept of obeying in advance, right? Worrying about what Trump may do when he becomes president and doing the things that protect your interests. On the other hand, there is a potential business issue here that may be that Jeff Bezos and the publisher of the LA Times, or the owner of the LA Times, are preserving potential business interests. Do the distinctions matter as to which one it is? Because obey in advance feels really bad in a democracy. Media owners having business interests, we're a little more familiar with.
Sure. Well, I don't know exactly what the circumstances were here, but as I said, the circumstances are highly suspect. This was not a decision that was made a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or anything like that. The fact is that Jeff Bezos does have business interests. Of course, Amazon and then Blue Origin, his space company, they have contracts with the government. I was proud that during my time at the Post and during Jeff Bezos' ownership, during that entire period, he resisted pressure from Donald Trump. Trump tried to undermine Amazon's business. He said he was going to do that. He threatened to increase postal rates, double them, triple them, quadruple them. He did intervene in a $10 billion Defense Department cloud computing contract to ensure that it did not go to Amazon. Bezos stood up to that. He let us do our work with full independence. He let the opinions department do their work as well. They actually wrote 2 editorials against Trump's campaign for the presidency, first in 2016 and then in 2020, when a question was raised as to whether they would actually write an editorial in 2016. Bezos said, well, why would we not issue an editorial endorsement? And they went ahead and did so. So I see this as a betrayal of the core principles of the Post, and also a betrayal of the practices and the principles that Bezos himself professed during my time at the Washington Post. I wrote about that in the book, how he stood up for us. I was very proud of that. I was very grateful for that. But this is something different.
A lot of strong reactions to this, including by people who are canceling their subscriptions to the Post and the LA Times. It's a double-edged sword here. As another Washington Post journalist, Carol Leonnig, points out, she's asked people not to cancel their subscriptions because, as she says, quote, "it will only hurt the independent news gathering that my colleagues and I strive to do for you every day," end quote. This is a tricky one, right? People have limited means in which to express their dissatisfaction with media organizations, and one of them is canceling their subscription.
Yeah, well, I still have my subscription, and I would encourage people to keep their subscriptions. I mean, the fact is that their subscriptions provide the resources to do the kind of investigative work that Carol Leonnig and many of her colleagues, her terrific colleagues, are doing every single day. A lot of what people know about Donald Trump and also what they know about Kamala Harris comes from the work of the newsroom of the Washington Post and other major institutions like the New York Times. They need the resources to do that work. They continue to do outstanding investigative journalism. They very much believe in their mission of holding the powerful accountable. That includes politicians, and it certainly includes the President of the United States or people who aspire to be President of the United States, which is the most powerful position in the world. So I want to support that kind of work, and so I maintain my subscription. I understand that people are deeply upset and want to register their concern, but I think people should try to imagine the world without a Washington Post, without the kind of work that they're doing every day, and we would be weaker as a democracy. The Post makes contributions with its journalism every single day to this democracy, and I hope that we still have the Post around to do that kind of work.
Marty, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. It's a special occasion, as I said, because you don't go out there a ton to opine on things, so it's nice to have you here. Marty Baron is a former executive editor of the Washington Post. He's the author of the important book, Collision of Power, Trump, Bezos, and the Washington Post. All right, coming up, how Donald Trump is running a dangerous shadow foreign policy this election cycle, plus an acclaimed conservative scholar who's been warning us for years about Donald Trump's fascist tendencies resigned in protest from the Washington Post this week. He'll join me to talk about why. Then the warnings from inside the Republican Party are growing in number and in desperation, why the newest alarm bells against a second Trump term are taking on a more urgent note.
When I worked for Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, I learned about commitment. Senator Moynihan committed his life to government service. This is what commitment looks like. Building New York's newest train station was Senator Moynihan's idea. It took 30 years and never giving up. When we register to vote, we make a lifetime commitment to democracy, a commitment to vote for all levels of government, working together to build a better America.
Introducing Ned's Plaque Psoriasis.
Ned, what are you wearing?
He thinks his flaky red patches are all people see.
Otezla is the #1 prescribed pill to treat plaque psoriasis.
Ned?
Otezla can help you get clearer skin and reduce itching and flaking, with no routine blood tests required. Doctors have been prescribing Otezla for over a decade. Otezla is also approved to treat psoriatic arthritis. Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Serious allergic reactions can happen. Otezla may cause severe diarrhea, nausea, or vomiting. Some people taking Otezla had depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss. Upper respiratory tract infection and headache may occur.
With clear skin, movie night is a groovy night. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla.
Your business requires trust. Prove trust without the fuss with Vanta AI. Tired of answering security questionnaires? Automate them with Vanta. Vanta AI learns from your documents and past responses to generate instant and accurate answers for you to approve. With Vanta AI, you can complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster, which means shorter deal cycles and more